Without horses, we cannot hunt. Without hunting, we will starve. This is another act of war.
I see that.
Men have helped me before, and I have money.
Put your money away, son. What do you think, Charles?
You know I told your father I will not fight over some horses.
But I made no such promise. Come along.
When it comes to the manipulation of Dutch van der Linde, a group of people that possibly suffer the most are the Native Americans. It's quite obvious Dutch takes advantage of them in both Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2. In the original Red Dead Redemption, we caught glimpses of it, primarily from the perspective of just Dutch being crazy and finding another group of outcasts to serve him. I think when it came to that game, the most interesting angle of all that we got was that of the scholar McDougal's.
So, I understand we have a mutual interest in Mr. van der Linde? You gonna kill him too? Kill him? Good God, no! What is it with you people out here? No, van der Linde fascinates me. A white man living among natives. A civilized mind turned savage. It's reverse integration or regressive acculturation. I don't know. I haven't found a name I like yet.
A white man fraternizing and living amongst the savage natives. It gives insight to the mentality and prevailing perception towards the natives and how those who sympathize with them or treated them any more kindly than was socially acceptable at the time are seen as being brainwashed or tricked by the lesser people that these natives are. Granted, how we see Dutch and his relationship with the natives in the first game is severely limited. Dutch's screen time and interaction with John only happens a handful of times, and any hope of piecing together how he and the natives began working together against the common enemy that is a civilized world, for the most part, was really open to speculation. Our main source of information and peek into that world and that relationship between Dutch and the natives was from Nastas. And even then, it's pretty cut and dry. All he says is that Dutch takes advantage of the natives that are already angry, upset, brooding over the position that they're in, and the submission towards the United States Army, towards the United States government, towards the law.
Van der Linde has attracted a following of young men on the reservation. They are turning to bad things.
So fine, we have a wanted outlaw that would rather be made a martyr before allowing himself to be captured alive. And he's hiding out in the mountains with the local natives that are all too willing to abandon their docile ways of life to continue to fight against a system that not only continues to take advantage of them and their people, but time and again go back on their word. Well, I think the background of having natives continuing to fight out in the woods and hills either alongside or for a wanted outlaw is very interesting. There really isn't much expanded on the natives in the first game. Their main purpose is really to explain where and how Dutch has such a vast number of men still willing to fight and die for him. I don't want to mislead and say that was his only source of manpower, because that's not the case. Through the gameplay, it looks like there's bandits and other outlaws, other misfits that are drafted among Dutch's ranks, but for the most part, the natives seem to be that untapped potential that he's dialed into. It's not until the second game that we get a better idea of the clever way Dutch could have attracted this following in the first. If we go back to the final chapter of the main story, Beaver Hollow, the chapter where not only is the wedge amongst the van der Linde gang members near its breaking point, many members are leaving, and those who have stuck around are either with Dutch and Micah, or really with Arthur and John, which with Arthur and John is more so the camp of self-preservation if anything. During this chapter, Dutch is referred to as being more and more unhinged, quick to lose his temper and even quicker to take a life. Dutch during this time has adopted a policy of anything is good as long as that means creating a bunch of smoke and noise. Smoke and noise meaning any type of distractions that can mislead any type of law enforcement, the Pinkertons, or the army off of the van der Linde gang's tail.
Then Tahiti, the Fiji Islands, or this place, New Guinea, dancing girls, freedom. But first we have to make a whole lot of smoke, a whole lot of commotion.
It's while adopting this policy and scouting the possibility of robbing a train carrying supplies for the United States Army that the ultimate blessing was handed to him. This blessing was the burning hatred of Eagle Flies, son of Rainsfall, the chief of the Wapiti Indian tribe. The situation of the Wapitis, and consequently the relationship between Rainsfall and his son Eagle Flies, has been a very delicate one to say the least. The Wapitis have been moved multiple times already, and after it's been discovered there's oil underneath the current reservation that they're living on, there's rumors that they're getting prepared to be moved yet again. In order to expedite this process or to ensure that the Wapitis are moved, a commander in the United States Army named Colonel Favors has created a culture within the nearby army division, a culture that promotes and possibly even rewards any type of actions taken against the Wapitis that would anger them and incite some sort of conflict between the natives and the United States Army. This in turn would not only make it easier for Favors to justify any wrongdoing he has committed intentionally against the natives, such as stealing their horses, removing their ability to feed themselves, shipping the young and women off of the reservation, destroying sacred sites to further anger the natives and incite violence, and possibly the worst offender of all, deliberately withholding medication from the Native Americans. Many of them are sick, many are dying, and the few that remain are split between peace and listening to their chief Rainsfall, while the other demand war. A war Rainsfall is well aware they won't be able to win. So while there is an ongoing split between father and son, the young that crave bloodshed versus the old that just want to keep their values and traditions alive, values and traditions that can only have any kind of hope of continuing on to further generations if war or direct conflict between the Wapitis and army could be avoided. Dutch finds in the middle of this entire situation a group of people that he can easily manipulate and take advantage of to his benefit. Arthur pretty much immediately identifies this and calls Dutch out on it, to which Dutch slyly responds by repeating the gang's old motto.
Why are you getting involved in this, Dutch?
You know me. We shoot fellers as need shooting. We save fellers as need saving. Feed them as need feeding.
Not this again. It's been quite a while since we helped anyone but ourselves, and even you know that.
I do want to point out that from this first mission where Dutch decides to get involved with the Wapiti situation, pushing Eagle Flies into more and more bold action, Arthur pretty much instantly identifies what Dutch is up to, and even tries to level with him during the opening stages of A Rage Unleashed, and again during Favored Sons, where Dutch is right by Eagle Flies' side when they both confronted what they believed was going to be a small military patrol, with the intentions of humiliating them by covering them in tar and feathers, which they naively hoped would draw attention off the Van der Linde gang and equally dishearten the army to continue its recent actions against the Wapitis.
What are y'all doing?
An eye for an eye. We didn't start this, Arthur. They did.
We? This ain't our fight.
It surely is.
Whatever it is you're planning, it ain't a good idea. They want you to fight.
Nobody will be killed.
We're just gonna trap a few of them in the valley, disarm them, tar and feather them, and remind them to leave these boys alone.
You have energy for prank?
I mean, just saying that out loud, it sounds like a horrible idea. Colonel Favors and his recruits based out of Fort Wallace would only seem to be hardened in their resistance and lack of sympathy towards these natives, should this little prank be conducted on them. But Eagle Flies, being far too young and frankly too obsessed over his own anger and rage towards the army, trying to right the wrongs his people have been forced to suffer through by way of brute force, cannot see what Dutch is doing. Considering Dutch has spent some quality time with Eagle Flies and hearing how Dutch tried to casually get Arthur to agree and see how him getting involved with the Wapiti situation is him attempting to save these group of people that they need saving when he is clearly precipitating their doom, and he knows he's sending them off towards their doom. He's completely condemning these people when he openly admits it himself just moments later to Arthur in the same mission.
Besides, it's perfect. People will see these boys. They won't notice us, and they'll think we're gone. Everyone will blame everything on the Indian problem, and we'll disappear up the river. But first, we need to trap them in this pass. Help me dynamite up these trees.
So, you're using them?
No, sir. No. Never. But it is mutually beneficial to draw attention to one problem and avail over another.
These are good people, but their situation is real complex. We ain't helping them.
Sure we are. Come on, let's get this done.
If you go back and just rewatch those two specific clips with Dutch justifying his actions with Arthur in front of Eagle Flies during A Rage Unleashed when they're going to retrieve the stolen horses back, Dutch aligns his actions similar to those of Eagle Flies. Here's a group of unfortunate people being beaten down by the United States Army, being taken advantage of by the system, being abused, disrespected, and made a mockery of. And in order to get Arthur aboard, hey, it makes sense to align those with what the gang's values and overall vision is. And then during the mission Favored Sons, where he levels a little bit more with Arthur, it's difficult to really tell whether if he was just trying to get Arthur to understand that, hey, I am kind of using them, and then gauging Arthur's response, because a few seconds later he says we are helping them. You know, he goes back and forth with these reasons as to why he's doing what he's doing, why he's getting involved, why he's so committed to helping quote-unquote eagle flies, the Wapitis, for empowering the younger generation of these Indians that are watching their elders and their old pacified chief Rainsfall just be taken advantage of. Eagle Flies himself says that his father has confused wisdom with weakness, and that's a perspective alone that Dutch completely capitalized on. It makes you wonder exactly how far Dutch was willing to go to ensure his ends, his goals, his needs, and wants were realized regardless of who suffered, or how many times he got someone else from the Vandalin gang to see what he was trying to get them to see, abandoning any reservations they may have had on a potential job or lead as long as the group's motto was dangled in front of them. This is their creed, this is their philosophy. If you can help someone in accordance to that, then why not continue on with it? I don't want to turn this too much into speaking about the Vanderlyn gang at large, or if Dutch was really always like this, and now we get the most brutal version of how he has always seen other people that weren't part of his own ranks or of his own vision, or whether if this is just what Dutch has become in his desperation and his gang being a former shell of what it used to be. But knowing this early on, damn near immediately from the start, that Dutch fully intended to use the natives as human shields of sorts is possibly one of the more brutal things he's done. And to add a little more fuel to the fire, Dutch was always speaking in a way that lit the fire in Eagle Flies' belly. He does admit to having some amount of responsibility in Eagle Flies' attack on the oil refinery, saying that it was his idea.
Why the hell would they attack the oil fields?
What do you mean? It's perfect.
This was your idea?
Hardly. The army, the government, the industrialists. They've taken everything from these people. Wouldn't you want to fight back?
You've handed them a death sentence.
By putting the government, the army, and the industrialists into a single target, that being the oil refinery here, it would give him the sufficient amount of smoke and noise he was really after. Especially coming off the heels of blowing the bridge, rescuing Eagle Flies straight from Fort Wallace, even though I don't recall that actually being something Dutch wanted or signed off on. And then of course the attack during the Favored Sons, where there was full-on cannon fire involved and way more military personnel than either Dutch or Eagle Flies himself anticipated. But it just goes to show that during this entire time, in an effort to gain a little bit of money, to throw a little bit of dirt, or in Dutch's words, smoke and noise into the eyes of those that could possibly come after him, he was more than willing to sacrifice an entire group of people. After the attack on the oil refinery, the Wapiti Indians had no choice but to pack up and completely move to a different country. They relocated up to Canada. And while Dutch's overall situation or position in terms of gang and manpower and those serving with or for him are completely different from the first game to the second game, it gives a little bit more of insight of how he's more than willing and more than capable of aligning his personal interests with those of someone else that he can benefit off of. So while not really seeing that dynamic directly in the first game, or the relationship between the Native Americans or the outlaws that are just misfits in the first game and how Dutch basically rounded them all up, it's not too difficult to understand how Dutch was able to do that, to make them be able to see from his point of view, from his perspective, and possibly even see it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. But let me know what you think. What's your take on Dutch's manipulation of the Native Americans? I didn't want to speak specifically about the Wapitis. I think the Wapiti situation as a whole is very complex, especially since if you go back and rewatch all those clips, Arthur is a giant thorn in Dutch's side when it comes to whatever Dutch is trying to accomplish. His plan essentially is just to burn the Wapiti Indians and to move on. And Arthur, alongside Charles, is trying to do the complete opposite. They're constantly going over to Rainsfall and trying to see in what way they can help him and help try to calm down his son to avoid a catastrophe. Really, the overall Wapiti situation is very interesting because I think we see the most character development when it comes to Charles, and then we see more of the dynamic between Dutch and of course the Native Americans, but also Dutch and Arthur. And that last mission of My Last Boy, where they all descend on the refinery, you see that moment where Charles and Sadie decide to really stay by Arthur's side. Even John runs down with Dutch, and that's not really anything particularly towards John. I think it's just more of a testament of where Sadie and Charles's loyalty, or more than anything, Sadie's loyalty lies. Let's talk down in the comments section. Like always, thank you so much for watching, and of course, I got some upcoming Red Dead Redemption videos, as well as some other stuff that's not really related to that topic or that game, so either way, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you like what you see here, or if you have any suggestions, recommendations that you want to see covered next, by all means, please share that down below. But until next time, I'll see you all later.